There goes Sulu and O'Neill running along the streets of a strangely familiar town. They call this planet Beta 3, but the city looks a lot like the one where they found Miri, and also looks a little bit like Mayberry, North Carolina. Of course, Neil has to fall. They seem to be in quite a panic. Sulu is a good runner, but they still can't seem to get away from these slow-moving hooded guys. They have that big empty street to run on, but still manage to get themselves backed up against a wall. Sulu calls for an emergency beam out, then tells O'Neill to run. Probably not the best idea, but these slow guys caught up to them anyway. O'Neill must have lost his communicator since only Sulu beamed up, and he's a little happy when he gets up to the Enterprise. Sulu states a key phrase here. They knew we were Archons. Is he referring to Landru and his monks, or the people? We will never know. Sulu does look a little lost, but he is happy. This episode is Return of the Archons, which by stardate takes place a little after Space Seed and right before A Taste of Armageddon. The Enterprise crew is looking for a ship called the Archon, which disappeared around Captain Archer's time. This must be a double planet system. The first point is lost here, since the captain and first officer would never beam down to a dangerous planet together. Logically, Spock should say something about that, but he never did for 3 years. This is a rare occurrence when Kirk says they made it. What Spock is saying is that they all look stoned. They should look for the sheriff, but he is out fishing with Opie. This guy is creepy. If I met him out on the street, I would probably run. They never say how often the festival comes, but it looks like fun to me. Tula and Landru meet and fall in love, but they really don't follow that storyline at all. Did you ever notice that this trolley track goes nowhere? On Earth, this time is called 420. The Red Hour arrives, and Tula goes wild. This woman also goes wild and chooses the stranger from the valley, but Kirk throws her off, and you all thought he was a player. I bet Riker would have kept her. I would have. How often do you get a free girl for the night? Usually I have to pay. There's no explanation on how some people are affected by the Red Hour and some aren't, but Landru has been around for 6,000 years, and his computer is sure to have some weak points. Landru shows concern over Rhaegar's daughter, who is outside, but he can't do anything about it because it's festival. On Vulcan, it's called Ponfar. Haycom shows a little insight on the system by saying they aren't old enough to be inside, so the effect might wear off as you get older. Of course, Haycom is still a little snitch. Here it's just a matter of bad timing. Haycom isn't affected by the festival, but he is still a devout follower of Landru, and like any cult member, he will rat you out in fear of being ratted out himself. And there he goes. Rhaegar shows him the room but gets a little upset when Kirk starts asking too many questions. Kirk looks out the window, concerned but also secretly thinking, wow, they really know how to party here. That's a really good guess. He also says he wants them to work on a plan, but in reality, they all fall asleep. Kirk slept standing up. How nice of him. 6 a.m. arrives, and the people stop their festival and wander around like zombies again. So I will have to take a point here, since it is highly unlikely a planet so far away from Earth would also tell time just like us. Unfortunately for Tula, the festival shook her free of the body, and now she has to suffer the side effects of what really happened last night. Shout out to Lindstrom standing up to her father, but -1 point since Dr. McCoy doesn't tell them he's a doctor. Their secret is out, and these two are worried, but to make matters worse, Haycom is back to rat out Tamar. This is totally not fair. He was in the cage and deserves better. And what about Haycom? Was he out in festival all night too? We will never know. These people are so terrified of Landru, Tamar offers no resistance. He's like, whoa, that's some really good weed there, dude. And then he dies. So it's the lawgiver's job to reabsorb those who have broken free of the body. Haycom here really is a snitch. Now he's going to get the Enterprise crew absorbed. Haycom always seems to be free of the effects of Landru. My guess is he rats out everyone to the lawgivers so they don't realize he hasn't been absorbed yet. Does this mean that if Tamar stood up to them, he would still be alive? There is no explanation on how these tubes work, but they did work on Sulu and O'Neill, not just the people on the planet. Rhaegar takes them to a safe house, and they all walk through the street, Walking Dead style. There could be quite a number of the people out there just playing along like Rhaegar, but they are too scared to out themselves to each other. Landru again stands up for Tula, but Rhaegar is unwilling to confront Belar since it was all the will of Landru. Didn't they just leave Tula sedated on the couch with the lawgiver still in the house? That could be a problem too. Landru decides that the post-festival party is going to be a good old-fashioned alien stoning. They are pretty slow, but since there are so many, the crew gets cornered quickly. At least they find O'Neill, but Rhaegar is terrified of taking him along. I will have to take a point here, since the woman on the ground moves her foot when she's tripped on. Lindstrom has a point here, as well as Kirk, but both of them don't know the ship is under attack, and Scotty hasn't called them, so I'm going to have to take a point since they have gone at least 12 hours without contacting the ship. Rhaegar pulls out his laptop. The light box isn't from the Archon though, it is actually from before Landru took over, so it's old. And Spock discovers there is a power source nearby. Rhaegar explains how the Archons got absorbed or killed, although he's very vague about the underground he's involved in. Their threes are arranged so you never know who the third one is. And here is where we discover the ship is under attack, just like the Archon before. This is why you stay in contact with your ship as much as possible, but they didn't do it. And the way Scotty describes the attack, they are in big trouble too, but they didn't decide to contact each other at all. Another point is lost here as well, since the guards in the back hear Landru too soon. Now Landru appears. Ironically, the world he describes is in many ways the future utopian society Gene Roddenberry described that Star Trek's Earth has achieved. Kirk tries to negotiate, but it is just a recorded projection. Landru definitely believes in the hive mind mentality. And now the security guards are finally on cue with the high-pitched sound. However, this sound only knocks them out, it does not absorb them. Minus one more point here, for the captain's log is placed here simply to mansplain to the audience what happened before the commercial break, in case they forgot in only 2 minutes. Kirk looks hungry. They haven't eaten in over 15 hours. I have to take a point here because there's a crack where the scenery meets the floor. Let's keep track of who they took. They took McCoy, they took back O'Neill, and one of the guards. And minus one more point for the captain and first officer not knowing the name of their other guard. That's just tacky. Rhaegar is missing too. Spock is convinced the lawgivers are acting the same way a computer would when it's given the wrong information. McCoy and the nameless guard come back, but not O'Neill. Kirk refers to him as Doc here instead of Bones, and he is really happy. McCoy describes Landru as being like Santa Claus. Kirk is taken to the torture chamber, but Marplon shows up. His job is to send the lawgivers on their lunches. Happy communing to you too. Spock searches McCoy's brain, but finds nothing. He is going to remind McCoy of that later on in one of their fights. Now it's Spock's turn. You don't make captain of a starship unless you have the ability to BS your first officer. Spock's like, are you kidding me? Here we learn the secret of Marplon. Spock's like, what a relief, I didn't know how I was going to get out of that one. Now Spock is full of questions that Marplon is still fearful of answering. Oddly, Marplon gives the phasers to Spock. Did he also give some to Kirk too? Is Spock smirking here? When Spock returns, they don't take Lindstrom or the other guard, so minus 1 point why the lawgivers didn't take them. I will also have to take a point from Scotty on the Enterprise, who is in command of the ship. When you lose contact with the ground crew for such a long time, you should send down a search party. Spock theorizes the society runs like a computer program, but how does he explain festival? That must be Landru's way of defragmenting. Captain Kirk has the 21st century solution. Power down and power back up again. Spock argues the Prime Directive, but if you want to get technical, they shouldn't have landed in the first place. Rhaegar and Marplon show up. Rhaegar hands them the communicators. They must have been kept in a different location than the phasers. McCoy outs them and a prison brawl erupts. This is one of the few times Spock uses a right hook instead of a Vulcan pinch. Of course, that might have something to do with him not having any effect on McCoy earlier. Tackle the lawgivers, steal their robes, and then discover the underground is made up of a bunch of cowards. Now we know why Landru has lasted so long, considering so many here aren't affected by him. They tell their history. Their world was at war, and Landru brought peace, but at a price. Kirk tells them that freedom has to be earned, a very important message, but one that liberals never seem to understand. They tell them they are going to find Landru, and Rhaegar reacts as if his nude photos just got posted on the internet. Spock pinches Rhaegar because he's tired of his shit, so they only take Marplon to the Hall of Audiences. It looks like they're all going to see the wizard. The bell is out of order, so you have to bow to open the door. Landru has an incredible hold over the people. Even his biggest opponent is terrified of him. Landru is fierce. Not only does he want to kill off the Enterprise crew, he wants to erase the memories of everyone who came into contact with them. Now we get to see the Landru 6000. Spock concludes that it was trying to create the perfect society that a machine would like. Landru neutralizes their phasers, and I will have to take a point for them not trying to go in and actually pull the plug. And I will have to take another point for not calling Scotty on the Enterprise to either beam down some more phasers or just blast the machine from space. And another point is lost here, since Kirk out-talking the computer to destroy itself would never work. Landru responds to questions just like Norman in the episode I Mud. The lawgivers now have no leader, and Kirk broke the Prime Directive again. He has a lot of confidence in Marplon, considering how terrified he was of Landru just a few minutes ago. Minus one more point here, although Sulu might have gone back to normal that quickly, he wouldn't already be on the bridge. Minus one more point here, since Kirk says the team staying behind will help the people's culture go back to a human form, since technically they aren't humans as we know it. Spock is impressed by Landru's achievements. Kirk tries to insult Spock, but it backfires. Lindstrom calls from the surface. Is the fight he's referring to actually him beating the shit out of Beelar? The Enterprise flies off into the sunset, with Spock contemplating that it was one version of a utopian society. In just a matter of 5 minutes, Captain Kirk destroyed an entire civilization that had been at total peace for 6,000 years, and left an occupying force that is going to teach them how to be more human instead of the peaceful culture that they had been that entire time. And they'll probably put an end to all those wild parties too. All simply because they were looking for another Earth ship that disappeared 100 years ago. Is that breaking the Prime Directive or not? Please leave your comments below. And Return of the Archons gets a whopping score of 84%. So what kind of a person is Landru? He wants a world without hate, war, conflict, disease, or crime. However, your individuality will soon become his individuality. But if you don't like it, one of his little ass-kissing followers will rat you out for not having his opinion. And remember, everybody is allowed to party their brains out. But if it becomes too much for you, you'll just have to grin and bear it, since Landru said it was okay. Or you can simply shut up and smile and pretend nothing is wrong, since freedom of speech here only means freedom to speak what Landru wants to hear. And if you don't, Landru's social justice warriors are gonna come out and get you. So, in a nutshell, Landru is a liberal. So, who were these Archons? John Lormer has been on practically every TV show during his lifetime, including Batman, and always has a special place in Star Trek history for his performance in The Cage, and we will see him here one more time. Not only did Harry Towns have 180 acting credits, he was an Episcopalian priest. He was also in Buck Rogers, and in The Incredible Hulk, he could also turn into a Hulk. Torin Thatcher was born in Bombay, India, served in the British military in World War II, and he was also a pirate. Morgan Farley had a Broadway career, served in the military in World War II, and was also in Soylent Green. We will see him on Star Trek one more time. Charles Macaulay played Landru. His success at this leadership role landed him the part in Splash as the president. Most likely a liberal one. Sid Haig has 150 acting credits, including Buck Rogers and Jason of Star Command. Lev Mailer will be back on Trek one more time. He has several acting credits, but did much more behind the camera. Carl Held was also on Space 1999, and spent several years on Falcon Crest. While serving here on the Enterprise as Lindstrom, he volunteered to stay on the surface of the Landru planet so he could beat the shit out of Bilar and pursue his love interest, Tula. And finally, Brioni Farrell was born in Greece as Xenia Gratsos. She was beautiful. She had several acting credits, but unfortunately spent the last 12 years of her life struggling with Alzheimer's. That's all for now. Thanks for viewing. Please leave your comments below. Click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button, and I will see you again soon.